Morning. Welcome to the Indiana Parks Alliance 2021 Meetup. This is IPA's first virtual event, and we're delighted to have you with us. I'm Dan Henkel, a volunteer and board member with the Indiana Parks Alliance, and I have the pleasure of serving as your moderator today for this event. Normally, of course, we'd be meeting at one of our beloved state parks, maybe grilling out for lunch and taking a hike in the woods, but nothing's normal these days, right? I suspect most of us have been hitting the parks and the trails and the nature preserves quite a bit as a favorite activity during the pandemic, reinforcing our appreciation of these natural areas and the opportunity to safely exercise and engage with nature. I'd like to express our thanks to the Eppley Institute for Parks and Public Lands of Indiana University, who are our partners in presenting today's session. We quite literally couldn't have done this without them. Their staff are hosting us on the Zoom webinar platform, and they've been of great help planning and making the preparations. We'll get to the preparations in just a few moments, but for now, a little word on how to enjoy the session. We have 7 speakers today on a range of topics to us all. We've built in a little time at the end of the program for these experts to address your questions. You'll find the Q&A button among the menu items at the bottom, or maybe it's at the top of your screen, where you can submit a question for one or more of the speakers. We'll take as many of these questions as we have time for, and we might be able to take a few questions during some of the presentations as time allows. Please use the chat button to make comments or for questions about how to use the Zoom webinar platform. And you can direct a chat message to everyone or to the speakers or to Lane Elliott for technical help. Please make sure that your questions or comments are respectful and appropriate. You may want to select Spotlight View so that you can see who's speaking and make their presentation seen on your full screen. Okay, let's get started. First, let's call on Tom Hohman to explain what IPA has been up to and what to expect in today's session. Tom Hohman is president of the Indiana Parks Alliance. He retired in 2012 from the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, where he worked for 38 years, the last 16 years as director of the Division of Engineering. Tom is past president of the Association of Conservation Engineers and a past president of the Indiana Native Plant Society. Tom?
Hi, glad to have this opportunity to talk, and I'm not going to be on very long because I'm not the main reason that you want to, I'm not the main person you want to listen to, but I'm glad everybody could make it today. And we've been looking for a good way to engage with our members, and we're hoping that this might be an answer. As a statewide organization, this really gives us an opportunity to reach out to everybody. Some of you are, many of you are members on this, but some of you are not members. So what I want to do is to give a brief explanation about what IPA is for those that are not members. Now here I have to do some technical things, which is I'm sure going to go flawlessly, but if not, well, that's the way it is. Okay, I'm going to do a share screen and hopefully go to, okay, I hope everybody's seeing my screen, and I want to do one more thing here. Okay, so what I want to do is talk briefly about the Parks Alliance mission. IPA is a charitable organization, a 501c3 for those that are into those terminologies with the IRS, meaning your donations are tax deductible where allowed. And our mission is to support and advocate for state parks and state-owned nature preserves, basically to give them the voice that they sometimes don't have on their own. As state employees, they are somewhat limited in what they can say about what their needs are. And so we want to be that voice. And we do this through education. And education is partly what we're doing here, this March meetup, for example, our newsletter. But education also means educating legislators and even the governor's office about what those needs are, because this is where the state employees can't speak for themselves. We actually go before legislative budget meetings, committee meetings in the legislature in a normal year. This year we didn't appear in person, but and talk about what those needs are and try to make them aware of it. Promotion, we want to promote the fantastic facilities that are out there for everybody to see. And we also do fundraising for certain projects. We are your money that you donate either through your membership to IPA goes for project grants to help some extra facilities on state parks and nature preserves. Also our Save Our Ash Trees program that some of you may have heard about, where we're trying to save a remnant population of ash trees on certain state parks and nature preserves. And we're also going to be starting an initiative pretty soon to do some work on trails in state parks. We also provide assistance for local friends groups. These are some groups at each state park, our nature preserve, that work just strictly with that park. And I'll mention more about that later. So right now I'm going to hopefully smoothly stop share and get back, and want to turn it back over to, I wanted to, first of all, I had a couple of other things I was going to say, not going totally smoothly, but while 2020 was in many ways an historically bad year, it was a year that I believe presents many opportunities for more widespread appreciation of our natural areas. And this will be a common thread in our presentations today. This event would not have been possible without the help of the Eppley Institute. We're doing all the technical arrangements here for the program. And so first of all, I'm guessing that most of you really don't know what the Eppley Institute is or what they do. And so Steve Wolter, Executive Director of the Eppley Institute, is going to start off by answering those questions. So here, I'm sure smoothly with the technology, I'm going to transition to Steve, and he will talk to us.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's great to see you, and thank you for bringing me on to the meeting. I am happy to have the opportunity for us to support everybody and support IPA and the work that you do. It's a fantastic organization, and I really appreciate it. We've been given the opportunity to share just a bit about what it is we're do at the Eppley Institute. So I'm going to share a brief PowerPoint because that's what we do in universities. The Eppley Institute for Parks and Public Lands is a institute that was created in 1993. And over the years, we've grown and changed as things happen in academia. But we're really more of a community service functioning organization than we are academic organization. We have 7 different program areas we work in. We do a lot of training and professional development, particularly with federal agencies. We've been working with the National Park Service on providing training since 1997, and we provide training to literally tens of thousands of federal employees in the parks and public lands arena. We have a research and survey program. We do quite a bit of research. One of our most current projects is dealing with what's happened to the use levels and the resources and the way we manage protected areas and parks after COVID-19. We've seen significant impact to use, and some of the people don't exactly know how to use the areas appropriately. There may be some issues there about how to use public lands appropriately, and maybe some leave no trace type ethics that might need to be something we focus on as land managers. We just got done offering the 74th Great Lakes Park Training Institute. This was started by Dr. Garrett Eppley. It's held always at Pokagon State Park, except for this year where we had to do it virtually. 500 plus registrations for the Institute, and we offered a week and a few days worth of training, just like we do every year. So next year will be the 75th, and you're all welcome to register for that. It's always the last week of February. One of the other areas that we work with is with an Illinois agency, and they can't offer this training program outside of their state. So playgrounds are a huge risk and safety issue for parks agencies, and there's a prescribed playground maintenance technician training program we offer all over the nation. We do park system planning and design, system master plans in La Junta, Colorado, Hudson, Ohio, Boulder, Colorado, Anchorage, Alaska, and yes, sometimes in Indiana, Wabash, Indiana, Monroe County, Bloomington, Carmel, Clay, Indiana, where we help agencies decide how they're going to build their system to serve their citizens. We also have a World's Park Academy where we're helping other countries develop park professionals. We have a particularly strong relationship with South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and just recently emerging with Mexico. And we've also got a program that's been around since 1993 called the National Center Accessibility, helping parks agencies plan for not only physical accessibility, which is relatively easy, but programmatic accessibility, things like tactile maps so that people who are sight impaired or blind, if they prefer that term, can actually understand what the interpretive design sign is trying to do. So that's a little bit of what we do, and we've been doing it for quite a while. My predecessor, Mr. Jim Ridenauer, was the DNR director for Indiana and the National Park Service director for a while. And he and I often talk about the Eppley Institute being the accidental institute at Indiana University because we don't think they planned for it to be this successful. This particular map, which may not be really visible because it's the United States map, just shows where we've worked. Every one of those red dots that you see there has a little IU in it. And that's the places that we have worked across the nation. And you can see in Alaska, Hawaii, we haven't worked in Puerto Rico, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess. But you can see the width and breadth of where we're working. We just received a contract to work with Acadia National Park, so there'll be a little red arrow up in there, and we're doing some work, we hope, with the Kennedy Center on accessibility. So we have had significant impact with these agencies, and it's one of the things that we do fairly well. But maybe to tell you why we do what we do, this might be our best bet. This is a little promotional video we have.
Parks and public lands are some of our most precious resources. It has become increasingly important for people to experience nature, recreation, and the outdoors. It is essential we protect parks for future generations and inform and inspire people to experience parks, the outdoors, and nature. It benefits us all, individually and collectively, to enjoy natural places. And the science is clear on this. It's been proven that parks improve mental health, relieve stress, and puts us back in touch with ourselves. It is important to protect access to recreating and the outdoors for all people to enjoy, and to provide needed facilities and infrastructure to enhance our parks and our communities. At Eppley, we understand the need for parks. We have been working to facilitate parks, the outdoors, and public lands for well over 20 years. We work with you to make parks more accessible, improve design, and put in place best management practices that benefit you. Our experience can assist you in better meeting the needs of your agency and your community. Because the most important thing isn't about buildings or trails or facilities or sustaining. The most important thing is to provide the resources most needed by our communities and future generations, however they want to enjoy them.
A little promotional video tells a pretty good story about what we do and how important we believe parks and public lands are to health and community wellness and many of the values that individuals derive from parks. So my last slide is just a quick review that, we are 16 full-time people and we love what we do very much. We identify with the agencies we work with. If it's with the National Park Service, we're pretty sure we wear green and gray, which is their colors. If it's with Indiana State Parks, we're pretty sure we have their logo somewhere on our bodies. We just believe very strongly that parks, public lands, protected areas are the most important thing that we can provide for our communities, and it's an essential health and community wellness function that is critical for agencies. So we are very grateful to be able to collaborate with all of you and to share all of the things that we have learned and done on our various websites, and we hope to collaborate further. But we also want to support Indiana State Parks. We think it's one of the best state park systems in the nation, just based on our quick studies. And clearly, it's one of the most comprehensive and closely available to its citizens. So thanks. And very much thanks to Ling for all of the help with the technology. Sometimes technology doesn't always work really well.
Steve, thanks very much. I'm always in awe of the scope of what the Eppley Institute does. Well, now let's call on Terry Coleman to share his vision of for Indiana State Parks.
Dan, thank you, and welcome everyone.
Let me switch. I was going to give you a nice introduction. Let me tell them who you are, Terry.
That's fine.
Okay. Terry's been director of our state parks only since last fall, but he began work at the division more than 40 years ago. Previously, he had been deputy director for state parks and then served as interim director when his predecessor, Dan Bortner, was named DNR director last August. Terry truly worked his way up, starting as a seasonal employee at Pokagon State Park the day after graduating from high school in Fort Wayne. He served as maintenance repair person, assistant property manager, and regional manager. Terry earned a degree in natural resources and biology at Ball State University. So, Terry, what's up with Indiana State Parks?
Good morning, Dan. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. There we go. We have much to tell about Indiana State Parks. It's a really exciting time right now. And so I'll share the vision and mission with you all, but primarily our way to get to our vision and our mission is being accomplished through our 2018 strategic plan. And that effort was headed in our division by Ginger Murphy. And so we picked out 8 points that we felt were most critical to take our system to the next level. And we had every level and every possible individual that could possibly be involved with this across our staff, top to bottom, side to side. So these 8 initiatives are staffing. So we want to invest in our people and begin a training program, which we have done. And we've got a really good toehold there going forward, preparing people to take us to the next place. Natural and cultural resources and our stewardship of those. Obviously, that's the core mission, the foundation of what we do, and we need to continue to work towards that. Facilities and infrastructure, we're a 105-year-old system now, so wise use of capital is critical as we try to maintain those facilities going forward. And the other thing we've got to do is begin to think about taking things off the landscape that no longer serve or where recreation or our new users are no longer interested. Obviously, we have to honor traditions and go forward, but we can't be afraid to take some things off the revenue or off the landscape as well. Revenue enhancement is critical for us as we continue to drive to our goal of 85% self-sufficiency in our budget. In FY20, we hit 81%, so we're moving effectively in that direction. Communication and marketing, we need to be effective and we need to be in front of our folks a lot. We need to share through social media, which also is handled in Ginger's shop as well. Technology, we need to embrace and implement options and opportunities. We got to work towards a Wi-Fi and good connectivity. Folks will stay longer if they can be connected, and it also generates excitement while they're there. Hospitality, we put in place a new service state park style model based a little bit off of Disney, and we're in our 2nd year of that and moving forward, and we think that is a way to take us to the future. And then sustainability, obviously. We got, as Dan mentioned, we saw the selection of a new cabinet secretary in Director Bortner at the end of July of 2020. And we're moving through a reorganization process within the Department of Natural Resources based on 7 pillars presented by Director Bortner. Obviously, customer service, focusing significantly on guest service and internal guests and customers as well. Fiscal responsibility across the agency. We're going to communicate a lot more than we have in the past, and we already are. And then importantly, a diversity and succession planning. So we need to get our staff to look like our communities. So we're working with that, and Ginger will talk more about that later. It's also critical that we help grow our team and provide them opportunity for personal and professional growth. And like any good business, we want to flatten the organization and create opportunities for efficiency. And then lastly, we want to enhance the DNR brand. And that'll be the model that the agency will follow, the state parks model on branding. So we look forward to sharing that. Kind of some updates for Indiana State Parks. As a part of the reorganization, we have merged the division of state parks with the division of outdoor recreation, and we bring outdoor rec into our recreation team by adding another deputy director. So we now have 4 deputy directors, and programs that are contained within that. We now have an outreach arm of the division. So the Indiana Trails program, the Next Level Trails program, which is a $90 million trail initiative based out of the governor's office. We'll bring land and water conservation funds and that model into the office. SCORP, the statewide comprehensive recreation plan, the statewide trail inventories, and manage the snowmobile program. And then really interesting, we'll bring 2 off-road vehicle properties, Redbird and Interlake, into the operations section of the division. So we're really excited about that. Additionally, we're taking over operation of 3 forest recreation properties, Deem Lake State Recreation Area on the south end of Clark State Forest, and Starve Hollow State Recreation Area and Jackson, Washington State Forest come to the State Parks family. And we'll also be operating the Covered Bridge State Forest Retreat. Additionally, we're gonna step in and try to provide some help for our friends in Fish and Wildlife. We're going to take over administrative operation of all of the campgrounds that are in Fish and Wildlife, and we'll be using our contract manager to manage all the shooting range contracts for Fish and Wildlife, trying to bring all the recreational programs within the department in-house in state parks. So just a few more. Obviously, the pandemic, and this year was the most challenging year probably in our 105-year history. Park attendance and camping went through the roof. Revenue right now from July 1 of 2020 is up $6.5 million. We topped $39 million in revenue on the park side of the business, and our resale account is up $440,000. Conversely, on the lodge side, we're down about $8 million, but we're poised really well. We're still ahead. Our numbers are ahead of the private sector, and we're poised to come out the other side really, really well. They've done an amazing job of moving through this pandemic and facing all of those same things that the hotel industry has faced. And again, we're ready to roll out. A couple of years ago, and I think 2019, we caught a $100 million capital initiative pushed through in three phases of $30 million a phase. Just some things that we've done with phase 1 was Pokagon Nature Center exhibits. We're doing major dock projects at Raccoon, Brookville, and Lieber. We just finished the complete renovation of 54 rooms in the Annex A Martin Lodge, 20 inn cabins at Turkey Run, and 9 hotel cabins. Just to show you the breadth and width of the interest in parks right now, our holiday gift pack sales this year in 10 weeks topped $1 million in online sales, and our total for our online store in 2020 topped 3.1 million, more than 50,000 orders. This year was also a good year for active land management. 8,700 acres affected, invasives removed from 4,100 acres. Just a week ago, Brown County becomes the largest historic district in the state of Indiana. And through our communication and efforts, state parks and property Facebook pages in 2020 touched nearly 24 million people. The governor's budget that he has pushed through to the state budget agency calls to retire bond debt across the state of Indiana. We have $10 million worth of bond debt remaining in state parks. That will be gone effective July 1. Interpretation in our in-person nature centers and virtual programs, we touched 2.8 million. Interestingly, 514 virtual programs this year touched just almost 1.7 million guests. IFA and the Indiana Finance Authority has come to our aid, and we've got major initiatives for utilities at Pokagon, McCormick's, Brown, and Charlestown state parks. So as I conclude, there's so many more things that I'd like to tell you and bring you up to speed on in Indiana State Parks, but I'm going to conclude with that. I want to put out a great big thank you to the Indiana Parks Alliance. It's a phenomenal organization with a great base that supports the mission critical work that we do. They champion our budget. They just do great advocacy work all the time. They've pushed through several small grants for us, and they've got the Heritage Ash Tree program. So we just can't thank you enough. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Terry. I think we're all big fans of the Indiana State Parks. And now for a national perspective on state parks and their usage during the pandemic, we turn to Louis Ledford. Louis Ledford serves as Executive Director of the National Association of State Park Directors. The NASPD is the nonprofit organization whose membership represents America's state parks. Together, they encompass nearly 6,800 parks, recreation areas, natural areas, and historic and scientific sites that receive 813 million visitors annually. That's in a normal year. Previously, Louis served as Director of State Parks in his native North Carolina, guiding an era of unprecedented growth for that system. He's active at the national level, advocating before Congress for parks, conservation, and importantly, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. He's served in leadership and board positions with numerous agencies and organizations. In 2017, Louis was awarded the prestigious Pugsley Medal in recognition of his outstanding contributions to the promotion and development of parks and conservation in the United States. It's now our pleasure to welcome Louis Ledford.
Thank you, Thomas. Dan, it's so good to be with you. Prior to being in this current role with the National Association of State Park Directors, I've not spent a lot of time in Indiana, but it's been my good fortune in the last 5 or 6 years to spend several different trips over to the Hoosier State, enjoy your hospitality, and frankly, be quite impressed by your park system. Let me start a video here or a PowerPoint and see if I can get this moving. So I don't have the time as we would normally have to give you the comprehensive overview of our state park systems in America, but with these few photos and what Dan has already shared, 18 million acres in nearly 6,800 areas, some 230,000 campsites, nearly 60 million campers in a typical year go to state parks in America. Lodges, swimming areas, 15,000 trails, ski slopes, and so much more. And frankly, iconic places. Highest mountains in the east in New Hampshire and North Carolina. A living coral reef in Florida. Hundreds of thousands of acres in a mountainous landscape in Alaska. The world's largest stalactite in an Arizona cavern. Historic locations where Europeans first came to America, to a limestone fossil bed on an Indiana river, and so much more. Quite a diversity, and as was said, being enjoyed by more than 800 million visitors a year. So, as we begin this conversation about the past year of the pandemic, I think we all quickly began to experience what was officially described just a year ago this week as a worldwide pandemic. We're all sure to remember what we started hearing was happening in the Northeast, the Northwest, and especially in Washington and Oregon states initially. Then across the country, from restaurants to schools to businesses to sporting events, everything started closing. The impacts on state parks was very immediate. Overcrowding, safety concerns, resource damages. Park staffs were doing everything they knew to provide for safe and sanitary conditions. Yet there was so much unknown, so much fear about trying to know what was doing. I recall being in a conversation with a number of the Arkansas State Park team, and they were talking about how they were cleaning and doing their best to close restroom facilities, to sanitize and spray and leave them closed for periods of time. But there was so much unknown. Were they doing the right thing? And the public wasn't using them. It was quite an unsettling time. So by mid-April, 12 state park systems had totally closed, as you'll see in this map, those in black. Imagine that. I just spoke to you about 230,000 campsites, and then 155 lodges and 9,000 cabins and cottages across our country. And you can see there's 30 in the red that were day use areas only. And when they say day use areas only, they may have been only one or two areas where some access was available. And then, of course, other limitations in the few other remaining states. I recall, we talk about the impacts. Let me just briefly mention the economic impact. I recall talking with Dan Bordner, then director of Indiana Parks last year, and he told me at that time that just the cancellation of weddings alone in Indiana was costing him $40,000 in revenue. And that's not to even mention the other local impacts about driving there, the impacts of the people that have made all those plans and efforts to be prepared for special times in their lives. As I understand, just in May and June alone, Indiana lost $188,000 in revenue just from those weddings being canceled. It's good to hear Dan report that in these 8 months since in this new fiscal year, you're $6.5 million ahead. That's quite impressive. So closing parks and open space, frankly, is not easy. There's always, of course, a lot of concern for public as well as the park staff safety. Some parks, of course, have gates and are designed to provide for control, and many others are very wide open. Rivers and trails and coastlines, expansive natural areas, quite a challenge to limit the public's use when virtually every other recreational opportunity have been closed in our country. And of course, similar conditions were existing in the national parks, the local parks, the Canadian provincial parks, and the Canadian federal parks. Yes, we took some lumps and some criticisms, and in this case, maybe some good humor in the media about closing parks. But some of the good news was it generated solid discussions about the need for open space in parks for our increasingly urbanized country, if you will. So then as we learned more, we started to realize some of the opportunities to reopen parks. And by late fall, you can see this October on the upper left, that we had pretty much got most of the park systems back open. The Northeast had a compact among the states, and still do, that certain conditions were required about visiting those states, testings and visiting to other states, and proof of the lack of COVID infections before you could use or enter the parks. New Mexico continues, as you can see in the map on the lower right, that prohibits the use of their parks except for the New Mexico state residents. So mostly open. As we talk about how did the states address these issues, so many states, and Indiana included, but so many states had so many good plans and came together in strong ways and considerable work ethics to try to make sure they were doing the right things. Day use reservations was something that was very popular in some states already, and a number of the other states during the pandemic started creating some kind of restrictions on visitations during the day. Trying to think of some of the others. Of course, we were quick to try to put in CDC guidelines, but those guidelines for operation of natural areas came much later than some of the others. Of course, it's understandable given all that the CDC was up against and trying to put forward good plans and directions. But there was an emphasis on a lot of coordination and communications with the public, as well as local governments and other partners. Pennsylvania was very strong in that. Changing expectations, improving the reservation policies, bringing more financial resources, changing the dynamics and the understanding of what the public expected. as we're limited in our time today, but just let me back up and say, people are connected now with parks at all levels. Parks instill security, stability, and make individuals and families feel better. They're havens of solitude, respite, escape, exercise, rejuvenation, and spiritual renewal. I'm talking to the choir today, and thank you, Indiana Parks Alliance, for letting us have this opportunity. We know that funding is going to continue to be tight for parks in the years ahead, and travel is going to be different for vacationers. But there's an incredible niche for state parks in America to fill. I just read last week that I think it was an environment and energy report about the National Park Service in 2020 was down 28%. I think that being a close day's drive from home for state parks in general probably had a significant impact on that. Relevance for parks has never been greater. And I think, again, many of you probably know this stat, but overall recreation in the outdoors is an economic powerhouse in our country, generating nearly $800 billion in consumer spending and 2 million jobs. The public's taken note of the value of parks. In 2020, voters in 7 states passed ballot measures that secured public funding and policies to protect and support parks, water, and nature near them. That total, $2.2 billion for conservation. That's at a time we're experiencing this pandemic. And it comes on the heels of some of the great legislation being passed in the last 2 years. The reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund 2 years ago, and then this past year, the funding, and again, these numbers by overwhelming bipartisan numbers in Congress to fund through the Great Americans Outdoors Act, the stateside program, and LWCF in general. It's been quite a year. State park visitation is ahead of where all of us expected. I've been doing a survey this past week, and of the 30 states that have responded, 20 states, despite those closures that I referenced earlier, 20 states had more visitation in 2020 than they did in 2019. Don't have time to go into it in much detail, but I hope y'all realize that the pandemic has now underscored how the public parks shape public health and the appreciation and the increasing value that more and more in the health community, as well as citizens in general and park users, appreciate the benefit of parks and green space for their improved health conditions and their qualities of life. And just as I end, let me say that we've had some great photo contests. Last year, one of our winners was this one from one of your beloved parks at Turkey Run for the activities category. Here's some other photos to give you kind of an appreciation of the spectacular diversity and beauty of America's state parks. From upper right, you've got Utah, to the right center is Texas, bottom right, Arkansas, lower left in Oregon, and upper left, North Carolina. Spectacular places across our country. No wonder we've been on record levels of visitation and growth, both in visitation as well as expansion of parks in the last decade. Spectacular places across our country. Again, thank you, Indiana Parks Alliance, for allowing us this opportunity to speak briefly about America's state parks.
Louis, thank you very much for your data and your insights from the national perspective. And I love the photos, especially our beloved Turkey Run. We're getting some thoughtful questions asked. Thank you for those. We'll hope to address all of them a little later in the program during our Q&A session. Meanwhile, remember you can use that Q&A pod or button in your menu to ask your questions. We'll get to as many as we can a little later. Back to Indiana now. As more and more people have turned to outdoor spaces for exercise, recreation, and enjoyment of nature, our national dialogue simultaneously has begun to address in earnest questions of diversity, access, equal opportunity. The Indiana DNR has put strong emphasis on making opportunities to enjoy the outdoors available to all Hoosiers and our guests. Here to brief us on those efforts is Ginger Murphy, the Deputy Director for Stewardship for Indiana State Parks. As one of 4 deputy directors, she's responsible for leading the division in interpretation, natural and cultural resource management, land use planning, volunteers, partnerships, and communications and media relations. Sounds almost like a full-time job. Ginger works closely with a great staff of leaders in each of those areas. She's worked for the Indiana DNR for the last 35 years, first as a field interpretive naturalist, then as chief of interpretation. Ginger's been a deputy director for 15 years. In her free time, she enjoys birding and volunteering to coordinate the scheduling and publicity of free community meals offered in a variety of churches in Johnson County. And she says she is owned by a black and white cat named Boots. So Ginger, what can you tell us about diversity and inclusion in the state parks?
Well, good morning, Dan, and good morning, everyone. And as I begin to share my screen, I just would like to say thank you to Louis for being with us today. I have learned so much about our own state park system just by being involved with America's state parks. It's amazing how similar the experiences are that we have in state parks across the country. So thank you for joining us today, Louis, from the mountains of North Carolina, or from Raleigh. I think you're in Raleigh today. So we're glad you're with us today. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am going to talk a little bit about equity and inclusion and opportunity in Indiana State Parks and in the Department of Natural Resources. And that is something that has come to the forefront for us. And I'm honored to be able to be with you today to talk just a little bit about that, about what we've done and where we're headed with that. As Terry shared earlier, our mission is to conserve, manage, and interpret our resources while creating memorable experiences. And a really important part of that is that it's for everyone, for people of all races and ages. And we want to invite everyone to come and be a part of our Indiana State Parks. So it is important to us that for everyone portion is very intentional in being in this piece. In addition to that, the governor has recognized the need for that and has just recently established a state office of equity, inclusion, and opportunity. And that person came into the role in February. The director is Kara Herring, and Kara was previously the director of public affairs at Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. She also worked there as the director of the Office of Institutional Equity, and she was the Title IX coordinator. So she has a good bit of experience in these areas that the state will be looking at, not just in state parks and the Indiana DNR, but in all of state government. She earned her degree from Purdue and her law degree from Valparaiso University. And while she was at the University of Notre Dame, she oversaw their affirmative action plans, helped develop those, oversaw their disability compliance for employees, and oversaw workplace investigations. So she comes to this position in state government with a great deal of experience, and she will serve on the governor's cabinet, so she reports directly to him. If you want to read more information about Kara and about this office, there's a link here to the information, the news release that came out when she began her position. So for all of state government, that's the big picture. Speaking about the Department of Natural Resources, Terry mentioned Dan's 7 pillars or 7 goals for the department during his time as directors. And one of those is diversity and succession planning. It's important, I think we all recognize that demographics are changing across the country, and we need to think about that and be aware of that. It's important that Hoosiers know that outdoor spaces are for everyone to enjoy and explore both today and tomorrow. And it's also important to share that there are a lot of great career opportunities in the Department of Natural Resources, whether it's the traditional park manager or park labor staff or park interpreter, or it's things that you might not think about, like an IT expert or someone who is a business manager who's helping on the business side of things, biologists, and a whole lot more positions. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. And that will be a part of how we work as an agency to think and talk about diversity and succession planning. Dan has developed a group to work on this that's going to be led by James Davis. And James is the Assistant Director of Planning and Design for the Division of Engineering. So he has a full-time job, and this will be something he does. This initiative will be something he does as a part of that. James has been with the Department of Natural Resources for more than 26 years. He has been a property manager. He's been an assistant property manager. He was the facility specialist for the Division of State Parks for a while. And now he is in the Division of Engineering. So he has a broad spectrum of experience and a good sense of what the whole department is about, not just state parks, and is going to really be a good person to lead this initiative for Indiana State Parks and for, in fact, the whole DNR. So we're looking forward to working with James and looking forward to assisting him in any way that we can in terms of how this functions in the Department of Natural Resources. I want to share just a couple of things too about what we have already done, some things that have been a part of the work we've done, in particular over the last 4 or 5 years, to really look at how to broaden the scope and understanding of who parks are for. One of the things that we have done is participate in the Junior Achievement Job Spark program for the last 3 years. This is a program that is for 8th graders, primarily in the Marion County and surrounding donut counties right now, but I think they're talking about expanding that to the Fort Wayne area. Evansville has looked at it as well. And it basically is a day at the state fairgrounds where there are opportunities to learn about all sorts of careers. And there's pre-work to do, there's follow-up work to do. And we have been a part of that for the last 3 years. Last year, we had to do it virtually, like everything, but it's a great opportunity to talk with students when they're really beginning to think about their careers and think, what can I do? And let them know about all of the opportunities that are available in the Department of Natural Resources for work in their future. The Hoosier Outdoor Experience was a program that we offered for a number of years that was intended to bring, again, all types of people with all sorts of interests to Fort Harrison State Park to try a lot of different outdoor activities. And it was a very successful event for a number of years. We also continue to do school programs and school program partnerships across the state with our interpretive naturalists. So we see kids from urban settings, we see kids from rural settings, and give them an opportunity to learn about the natural resources and the history of our Indiana state parks. And finally, we did for several years what we call the Capital Campout. And this was associated with America's State Parks. You heard from Lewis, this is one of the initiatives that America's State Parks did. And the idea was to host a camping event in the capital city. Some states did it on the Capitol grounds. We're lucky enough to have Fort Harrison State Park, which is right in Indianapolis, and we hosted it at Fort Harrison. So we worked with boys clubs and girls clubs in Indianapolis. We worked with the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts. We worked with Camp Town, which is a nonprofit organization that takes urban kids on field trips and backpacking trips across the country, and had a great time hosting that Capital Camp out at Fort Harrison. They got a chance to camp. They got a chance to take a night hike and hear owls. They got a chance to cook outdoors and experience kayaking, canoeing, and fishing, and all sorts of outdoor activities. So this is something we have been working in this direction for several years in terms of engaging all types of audiences in our state parks. Some other things that we're working on really have to do with just an awareness when we develop materials for guests so that people recognize that they are included. We work very hard at using inclusive images. This is an example of our Opt Outside event that we do the day after Thanksgiving on Black Friday. So we're being intentional about using images that are inclusive. The publications that we do, the Indiana Recreation Guide this year, again, we're looking at a diverse group of people, a diverse audience, and we're making an effort to think about that when we use images. The fishing guide this year has some sections that are, the rules are in Spanish as well, We're looking at ways that we might do portions of the recreation guide in Spanish as well. We do signage at some of our properties in Spanish. One of the things I think we really need to spend some time working on is doing some signage at our beaches that provide Spanish language as well. That's something that we're seeing a lot of Latino families use our beaches. And so we want to make sure they have all the good information that they need as well. So we have some work to do in that area. And finally, I think the most important thing that we are trying to do and need to continue to do is just listen. We need to listen to what are the interests and facilities and needs of audiences and populations that have not typically been in parks a lot. We also need to think about what would help you want to come and visit a park if you are not visiting a park, and that's for everyone again. And I think that is an important piece, and that will be an important piece of the work that James Davis and the folks that work with him do as well. So that's critical. We can't make the decisions without listening and gathering information. And we do have what we call our second century survey that is available online, and it asks some of those questions. If you don't come to a park, why don't you come? And so there's an opportunity for us to hear that, even if we don't talk to people directly. That's a really, really quick overview of what's happened and what is going to happen in terms of equity, inclusion, and opportunity in Indiana State Parks and in the department. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to give you just a quick look at what we've done and where we're headed with that initiative. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Ginger, thanks so much. I applaud the DNR and state parks for helping everyone feel welcomed and enjoy all that these properties have to offer. Now, nature preserves also have seen quite an uptick in visitation during the past year. Those trails and boardwalks through diverse habitats provide a safe, enjoyable way to view wildlife and all the species of trees and plants that inhabit these protected areas. With us to talk about the importance of nature preserves and the challenges of their stewardship is Ron Hellmich, who's director of the DNR Division of Nature Preserves. Before becoming division director in 2019, Ron had been coordinator and data manager of the Indiana Natural Heritage Data Center. He earned a law degree from the Indiana University Maurer School of Law, a master's degree from the IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs, and a bachelor's degree in natural resources from Ball State University. Ron's service with the Division of Nature Preserves dates back to 1987, when he began as an intermittent employee while a student at Ball State University. So Ron, please fill us in on those nature preserves that we love so much.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank you for having me here and allowing me to share the vision and mission of the Division of Nature Preserves. I'm going to start with some key vitals here about the Division of Nature Preserves. Our mission is to protect the full array of natural biological diversity by identifying, protecting, and managing natural areas to maintain viable examples of all of Indiana's natural communities and rare species. The Indiana Nature Preserves Act was passed in 1967, and our first Indiana Nature Reserves was Pine Hills Nature Reserves, which is located in our partner Shades State Park. Currently, after about 50 years or 50 plus years, we have 291 dedicated state nature preserves under the Nature Preserves Act. And this protects over 54,000 acres. We have nature preserves located in 72 counties of the state, and we work with 45 different partners who own and manage our different nature preserves. There are 3 programs. Let's see. Here we go. There are 3 programs within that are part of the division. The first is the Nature Preserves program. And its goal is to preserve, protect, and manage Indiana's nature reserves throughout the state. And this protects many of the different ecological communities in Indiana. And that includes forests, wetlands, prairies, savannas, cliffs, caves, and even a cultural place. It's a shipwreck in Lake Michigan, the J.D. Marshall Nature Preserves. Our staff also serves as technical experts for managing and protecting natural areas throughout the states with our many different partners. We manage from a small 1 acre prairie, German Methodist cemetery prairie up in Lake County, to working with state parks at 10 o'clock line nature reserves in Brown County State Park that protects as a nature reserves over 3,300 acres. Now, of course, once these nature reserves are in the system, there's a lot of activities that have to go on to protect and maintain the ecological conditions of the preserves. And then in the upper right, you'll see a photo of a recent burn that our staff conducted up in Liverpool Nature Reserve just this past week. So this management activities will help continue the existence of the natural communities that occur at the preserves. And this also includes, of course, the invasive species management. Another part of the nature preserve system is visitor services. Now we very much limited to places that we know that can handle visitation, and we limit it to hiking and the trails. So the only services that we would offer with the trails and the parking lots. Nature reserves also serves as important scientific places, and so we have a number of scientific studies being conducted on the nature reserves. The second program of nature reserves is the Indiana Natural Heritage Data Center. Its goal is to find and record elements of natural diversity in the state and database this information in an advanced geographic database. Our heritage program works within a nationwide, even international wide network of heritage programs throughout the United States and all the Canadian provinces and many Latin American countries. They all share the same methodology, so that way the data can be comparable across states and across nations. This past summer in 2020, our heritage ecologists were able to go out to Winmac Fish and Wildlife Area. They were actually looking for some savannas, but actually came across a globally imperiled inland coastal plain marsh community there at Winmac that was previously undocumented. And there they found a plant species, the Coletanea longifolia, subspecies longifolia, that was formerly thought to be extirpated from the state. So they were able to find that. And this community and this species is actually commonly found associated with along the Atlantic coastal plains. So it's a disjunct community and plant species that we have right here in Indiana. The third program is the Lake Michigan Coastal Program. Its mission is to strengthen partnership by providing the tools and resources to manage coastal resources in the coastal area of Lake Porter and LaPorte counties. Part of what they do is to try to strengthen the partnerships and coastal resources by having giving grants out to partners, and each year they do about $500,000 to the different partners to help protect coastal resources. They work with NOAA, this is a sponsoring federal agency. They are one of 34 coastal programs in the country, and they coordinate very closely with the other Great Lakes coastal programs. I'm kind of a simple kind of a person. So when I look at the vision of nature reserves, I'm really wishing to keep it very simple, and that is to continue to pursue the mission of protecting the best natural areas in the state of Indiana for the communities and for the species that it provides habitats for, that lives there. We are just but visitors to these areas. That is their home, and that's, I consider, one of our top customers, is all the things that live in the nature reserves. So I want to thank the Indiana Parks Alliance for all the help that they do for the nature reserves. They've certainly been a good a good partner, and help us with some problems that have popped up. And we very much look forward to continuing to work with Parks Alliance and the people associated with that. So thank you very much.
Ron, thank you. And I want to thank the Nature Preserve staff for maintaining such great trails in the nature preserves. It's been such a joy during the pandemic to have those to walk around in and to see all the species in, especially when we had to keep social distancing. But it's great fun and illuminating under any conditions. So thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Of course, the Indiana DNR isn't the only organization responsible for managing public areas and making them available to the public, natural areas. Our final speaker is with the Nature Conservancy in Indiana. John Ketzenberger is Director of Government Relations for the Nature Conservancy in Indiana. A recovering journalist, as he puts it, he spent 25 years covering politics and business for several Indiana newspapers, including the Indianapolis Business Journal, the Indianapolis Star, and the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Between then and his current gig, John was president of the Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute. So John, thank you for joining our meetup to enlighten us. So what's the story?
Yeah. What's the story? Well, that's a good question, Dan. And I'm grateful to be here and to be able to share with everyone today. I like telling the story of what we do and how it works with so many people who are already part of this program, and who are great partners with us and so many others to make the natural areas of Indiana what they are. And I'm grateful to be part of that. So good morning, everyone. I wanted to say that Tom is a particular partner of ours. We work closely with others to help in the mission of gaining new funding and expanded funding and making our natural areas more accessible to people. And of course, the DNR is a tremendous partner, and we are grateful to be able to work with everyone. The Nature Conservancy, as many of you know, is an organization that's worldwide. In Indiana, we've been working for 60 plus years and have 60 people spread across the state, from Lake Michigan to Harrison County, and from Hamilton down to Evansville, and all points in between. And we are the largest private organization engaged in conservation. As you know, we've got a long history of conserving land, acquiring and conserving, and working with our partners to ensure that that's got long-term permanent status and accessibility. We've also worked internationally. Recently, we were part of a group that helped secure 260,000 acres in Belize, which was of particular interest to us because our chief scientist, John Shuey, is an expert on butterflies and has spent many years working and doing research on butterflies in Belize. So this was an important area for us. So We're 9 months into our new 5-year strategic plan that organizes our work in 4 major areas. The first is the one that I was just talking about, the land and water protection, our historic core mission. We are also working closely in soil health and nutrients, AKA helping the ag sector implement better practices for the improvement of both the soil and the water in the state, and to ensure that systems around the country are less polluted and in better shape for all kinds of purposes, not the least of which is resiliency during these changes of climate change. And to that point, our third pillar is climate action. Our goals are to help reduce greenhouse gases produced in Indiana and also to promote clean energy across the state. And we're working closely with many people on achieving those goals. And our final pillar is inspiring people for nature. You've heard a lot about that. And the DNR is, the state's preeminent organization in managing those kinds of things. This is an area that's rather new for us. And we are learning as we go and taking a very deliberate approach. But this is a little bit about what I want to talk about today. As you may know, we have 73 preserves across the state, including 29 that are open to the public. And they function much like those that DNR operates, except that we don't have many of the amenities that DNR includes in its preserves. So let me qualify that count. We had to close one of our preserves last year when it was overrun by people who were seeking relief of nature due to the pandemic. Fall Creek Gorge near Lafayette was inundated with people. Cars were lined up along the county roads. Neighbors were calling the sheriff, asking the sheriff to manage the situation. I drove by there one time early in the pandemic, and if any of you are familiar with that, the road that curves around was lined on both sides with cars. There must have been 40 or 50 of them in there, and it's a fairly remote place. Well known for the so-called potholes that have been formed in the limestone base of Fall Creek, and it was very popular. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, we don't have those kinds of facilities. Parking was, I think, maybe one space, if that. There were no other real amenities there, and people were crawling all over the rare plant species that are back there and leaving behind trash such as diapers and, unfortunately, things like hypodermic needles. So after a couple of weeks and working closely with the sheriff, we decided that we had to close the preserve. And as you can see here in the picture from the Lafayette Journal and Courier, we had to drop a couple of trees and post the signs and start the cleanup. And unfortunately, it'll be a while before we're able to reopen Fall Creek Gorge. This is a painful experience for us, but it also coincidentally has informed one of the key elements of our Inspiring People for Nature work. Our goal with the Inspiring People for Nature is to move 20% of Hoosiers into a position of understanding that their actions can have a positive effect on nature. We did some polling work to understand what people thought about and where we might focus our work. And one of the things that we learned, which is not surprising, is that people love nature, but many people don't understand how they can affect nature or how they can make things better in nature. And so we undertook that as a goal for our work. We want people to understand that they can have an effect on that, and we will have many programs that do that. But one of the main courses of action is to designate 10 of our preserves as so-called keystone preserves and invest more in them to accommodate more Hoosiers and hopefully prevent the damage we saw at Fall Creek Gorge. I've circled 8 of the 10 locations that we have in mind to update as keystone preserves. We're aiming for a geographic diversity and have chosen areas that we think can be modified with parking, possibly restrooms, and certainly information. We plan to implement a variety of means to provide this information, from traditional signs and electronic maps and special websites for in-depth information, including history of the sites, the unique features that are in the sites, and the place in the local ecology. Beginning in Northwest Indiana, you can see that we've included Ivanhoe, Dune, and Swale, one of the few places to see such natural phenomena. It's an area that we were just hearing about up along Lake Michigan. Just south of there is Kankakee Sands, and this is our 8,000-acre prairie restoration, where about 3 years ago we introduced bison to do management of the grasses and the more than 200 species of plants that we've restored onto the property up there. Next, we go all the way over to Northeast Indiana and Douglas Woods, an area that features fens, bogs, and glades. And then it's down to Bitternut Woods in Hamilton County, which is a great urban space. Then we go over to Putnam County and Green Bluffs with the trails and birds. And then there's Big Walnut over in Owen County and Hitz Road Hamel in Brown County, two more examples of Indiana's forested uplands, areas where we have trails and where we have the ability then, we think, to help further educate Hoosiers on not just nature, but how they can affect it in a positive way. And finally, there's Harrison County Glades. It's one of our many holdings down in Harrison County along the Ohio River. And I think will be a beautiful area for our work to occur. We believe that making these places more accessible will give all of us an important means of communicating to Hoosiers of all kinds, all races, all gender, all Hoosiers, a fundamental truth that we may take for granted, and that is Indiana has a stunning variety of natural places with important and interesting features, and we should all do more to ensure that these places remain intact for our children and our grandchildren, or as former Governor Evan Bayh liked to say, and we reporters used to mock him for, future generations of Hoosiers. We've come to appreciate the intrinsic link between nature and people even before the pandemic, but our experience at Fall Creek Gorge has informed how we should approach accessibility of our preserves. And I want to emphasize that we're working with many partners, including the DNR, land trusts, and others to be additive in this mission of helping Hoosiers appreciate and enjoy nature. So with that, I'll turn the program back over to Dan. I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure to be here today.
John, thanks very much. IPA appreciates the work of the Nature Conservancy and especially the chance to advocate together on important conservation issues. So thank you for all of that. Well, we've heard a number of perspectives on a range of topics here today. And we've had quite a few questions. A number of questions have been answered by speakers as we've gone through today's event. They've been using the Q&A function. We have some others to address now. If you'd like to ask a question of any or of all of our panelists, we've got a few minutes, so please use the Q&A and type that in. Let's start with a question for Terry Coleman. Does removal of invasive species fall under the category of deferred maintenance? Terry, what about that?
It doesn't fall under the category of deferred maintenance. Primarily, we fund anything related to invasive species through a preventive maintenance program and also through operating budgets, kind of as an overarching division funding plan. And then also individual properties also have access to their individual property budgets where they do invasives work as well.
Thank you for that. Okay, we appreciate that. Got a number of other questions. Here's one for Lewis Ledford. How do you feel Indiana state parks rank with others in the country? Lewis, can you talk to us just a bit about the parks in various states have different styles, cultures, traditions, of course, very different topography, history, and geography. But can you give us a sense where Indiana state park system falls in the spectrum that you've seen around the country?
Thank you, Dan. I think that's a great question and a topic that we could spend a lot of time talking. And you get back to, as you're making reference to, the statutes, the priorities, and what the citizens of the respective states want. But frankly, and I say this in all sincerity, even though I'm in an Indiana call today, I think there's a lot of things that other states could model after Indiana state parks. And what you're doing, especially in the way that you're managing some of the economies and economic impacts of the services that you're providing. I've had the good fortune in the last 5 years to visit Brown and Falls of the Ohio and several of the other states, and even Harrison and so forth. And everyone I've been to, it's just quite impressive, the support and the community relations. Indiana even hosted our national conference there. I think it was in 2016. Many of the directors from across the country came away very impressed with what Dan at the time and Terry and Ginger and others in the Indiana team are doing. So we're glad to have Terry involved in some of our work on the national level. And frankly, there's a lot of good things that are happening in Indiana that many of us could model across the country, especially in how to manage budgets and building support for the parks from the General Assembly. It's one thing to talk about dollars, but having a group like Indiana Parks Alliance and others that can speak for parks when, of course, staff like I was when I was director, or Dan or others, they expect you to say that in the General Assembly if you have the opportunity to advocate for parks. But having strong community relations and support for parks is incredibly important, and I commend Indiana for what you're doing in that regard.
Louis, thank you very much for those insights. Next question has to do with advocacy as well. It's of John Ketzenberger, and it speaks to the advocacy that IPA does along with the Nature Conservancy and other groups in the Indiana Conservation Alliance. The question is, what are the chances for an increase in legislative funding for the Harrison Conservation Trust? Can you first explain what the trust is and then answer that question about looking for an increase in legislative funding? John?
Sure. The Harrison Trust was started in 1993 when the legislature approved a program to order a specialty license plate, the blue environmental plate, and a portion of that goes to the fund and to the trust. And it's had a couple of different names over time, but now is the President Benjamin Harrison Conservation Trust. And it also has the ability to be additional appropriation from the General Assembly. This being a budget year would be a prime time for that. And believe me, we've worked very hard with Tom and many other partners to increase funding for the Harrison Trust. Unfortunately, this will be the 11th year, I believe, probably, that there has been no increase from the General Assembly. So that fund sits at about $1 million a year. The trust fund is used to help with acquiring land or other related expenses, and is often used as a matching fund, so that an entity such as TNC could use access to the fund, the DNR, others could use access to the fund to help acquire land for conservation. We continue to work to make the argument to the legislature that they should fund this at a higher level. Even a $5 or $10 million increase in this would have a huge impact on the ability of all these organizations to do more conservation. We have not met with success, unfortunately. There is legislation in the General Assembly that is moving right now that would, it's Senate Bill 373, and it would create a mechanism for the Harrison Trust and the Clean Water Indiana Fund to receive monies from carbon offset program that would be implemented through the DNR and the Department of Agriculture. We don't know if that legislation will pass, and we don't even know what the impact might be, but we're hopeful on both fronts that it would be good public policy and also a boost to the Harrison Trust. And we remain hopeful that might happen this year, Dan, but otherwise I don't see any additional funding to the trust this year.
All right, thank you, John. We know that advocacy is very important to our members. They mention that a great deal. They enjoy using the natural areas around the state, but they also think it's very important to look for funding and other legislative fixes to some of the challenges that we have. Next question is for Ginger Murphy. Does state parks have any plans to send naturalists into urban areas for programs rather than only offering them at state parks? Ginger?
Thanks, Dan. And in fact, we do that. We offer off-site programs. Our interpreters do that. They have classroom programs that they offer. There are a lot of responsibilities that an interpreter has. They are, in most cases, responsible for programming. They're responsible for exhibits in nature centers and managing the nature centers. They're also responsible for natural resources projects. So invasives management, our deer reductions where we have those, our deer hunts where we have those. So they have a lot of duties in addition to just programming that are a part of what they do. They do the communications and marketing work in a lot of cases for our property. So that is one of their responsibilities. And we do off-site programs. That is a shift that we have been making over the last 10 to 15 years to not just do programs on properties, although that is still our priority, but to go into classrooms and to go into urban settings or rural schools and be with the kids to then introduce them to the outdoors and say, hey, we've talked about these wildlife species, we've talked about habitat, we've talked about these cool places that you can go and be outdoors. Now come try it. So we have been doing that, and that is something that we will continue to do.
Good, thanks, Ginger. I'm always amazed at the scope of DNR programming. There's always more going on than I have any idea about. So thank you for explaining that. We have just a couple of minutes, and we have two more questions for our speakers. First, Ron Hellmich regarding nature preserves. Does the Division of Nature Preserves have plans to expand the number of preserves that have parking lots and trails for visitors? We know that's important for people who want to go and hike in the preserves. Ron?
Yes, we actually are developing new trails. We are hoping in the near future, I mean, this spring, this summer, to open up a new parking lot and trail at one of our preserves in Elkhart County at Elkhart Bog Nature Preserve. It will include a boardwalk out into part of the bog itself, so people can get out and be an immersive experience in that type of a wetland. So yes, we are always looking to see which preserves can handle visitation, and we will work to do a trail and parking and for services for visitors at these. So yes, we're always looking for that.
All right, thanks, Ron. Our final question is for Terry Coleman. It's a two-part question. With the funding that you are now getting for deferred maintenance, do you feel you'll be caught up with those needs? And then once you're caught up with deferred maintenance, what do you see as the top priority for new initiatives in state parks? Terry?
The $100 million will go a long way to help us move forward and capture that. But you know, if you look at just Brown County State Park alone, you could take a windshield tour and really never walk in a facility and easily find a way to put $70 to $120 million into that facility. So, you know, we have a tremendous amount of aging infrastructure. We're now 105 years old. A lot of the basic facilities, and especially the utilities, were put in, you know, anywhere from 100 to, 60 years ago. And so our capacities have changed, our occupancies have grown. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that, as we define it, not really the sexy work that needs to be done, but those infrastructures and road bases and bridges and all of those things. So no, 100 million won't get us there, but it sure puts us a lot further down the road, and and we'll sure be in a better place. And then I think as far as future development goes, I think that we would continue to look at options and opportunities to put things on the landscape and or take things off of the landscape with capital funds that take us to the next place with what our guests want or expect to see as we go forward into the future. You know, like I said, we've had 105 years of our system now. Back at our 100-year anniversary, and just following that, we went into the strategic initiative, and our 5-year plan was put in motion based on a survey that Ginger put together. We call it the Second Century Survey, And then that was the foundation or basis for the strategic initiative. So I think that we need to look and see what those things are that maybe we haven't even thought about that our guests want and need as we go forward. You know, we all want to provide a place where people can come and get away, and we hope that they set their devices down and soak it up while they're there. But the reality of it is as well, people want a level of connectivity, and it does a couple of things for us. If we have, as just one example, if we have quality Wi-Fi and connectivity at these properties, it'll transition to longer stays. People can work while they're there, and it might transition to a day or two longer with us. And then secondly, when they're connected, they tend to share. And when they share, people see that excitement at the moment when it's happening. So I think those are kinds of things. But really, the main emphasis right now is just infrastructure and taking care of aging historic facilities.
All right, thanks, Terry. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but we're running close to the end of our time, so we'll have to leave it there. I'd like to bring back Tom Hohman of the Indiana Parks Alliance for a few closing comments. Tom?
I want to thank all the presenters today for some great presentations and thoughtful questions. I also want to send a big thanks to Dan Henkel for organizing this thing, and I'm just amazed we're actually right on schedule. Dan, I think I need to let you run our board meetings from now on. You're really good at keeping things on the schedule. So I want to, this is our first one of these types of events. I hope we can make it an annual event. And most of you, or many of you anyway, are members, but a number of you are not. So I want to talk a little bit about, share a screen here again. Indiana Parks Alliance website. If you are not members and would like to join and support our work here, here is our website address. You can just Google Indiana Parks Alliance and it will come up, or you can enter indianaparksalliance.org. And you can either join online, there's a place to do that, or download the membership brochure. And just while I was at the end of our presentation here, I saw that we just received a new membership from one of our attendees here today. So thanks for that. And I would hope to see some more so that we can, you can support our work here that way. In addition to joining us, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to the friends groups that I mentioned briefly earlier and talk a little more about them. These are groups that are dedicated to one specific park or our nature preserve. There's only one friends group for a nature preserve, that's for Limberlost, but about 2/3 of the parks have friends groups. And if you have an interest in a particular park, we'd love to have you as an IPA member, but also if you have a interest in one particular park, whether it's Brown County or Waukegan or other state parks, there likely is a friends group for that park, and you can support them. You can find a listing of those at www. Well, it's from the go to DNR, and I thought I had, no, I guess not. You can go to, it's on the state parks website, or again, you can go to the IPA website. If you go to the I think it's on the mission page on our website. There's a direct link to this parks a listing of all the different friends groups. So that would be another good way to support. Now I want to do a quick shout out about one bill that's in the legislature right now, Senate Bill 389 on isolated wetlands. And a lot of you have heard about this already. It would remove all state regulations protecting isolated wetlands. And isolated wetlands are the ones that are not connected to the waters of the US, and therefore they are not regulated by the federal government. So if we remove the state regulations from these isolated wetlands, there are no regulations on it, and they can be filled in without any permit or any restrictions whatsoever. This bill has passed the Senate. Unfortunately, it's currently in the House. The governor himself has expressed reservations about this bill, and some other legislators certainly have reservations. So as there's a lot of discussion on the House, it's important you ask your state legislator to oppose Senate Bill 389. That Isolated wetlands are important to the state. This is how you can help. Now, quickly, how to do that, because some of you have done that before, but if you haven't, you can certainly write a letter, or you can go to the Indiana. Did I skip? Okay, guess not. You can go to the Indiana iga.in.gov is the website address, Indiana General Assembly website, and this is what you'll see. When you see that, you take up here on the upper left where it says information and click on that, and you will get a drop-down menu. And that drop-down menu will have a way to find your legislator, and you click on that, and there will be a form come out where you fill in your address, and it will tell you who your legislator is if you don't know who your legislator is. So I wanted to mention about that. And that is, I need to stop share now. So that's basically all I had to say, and I'm going to turn it back to Dan. And again, thanks to Dan and all of our presenters today, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we will try to have this again and learn from this time, make some improvements based on your feedback, and turn it back over to Dan.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. Again, we're grateful to the Eppley Institute for hosting us today and being our partner. And a little shout out to Troy McCormick of Natural Concepts for making that very cool video footage that started and will end our program today. Special thanks to all the speakers for sharing their insights and expertise, and all of you for participating in IPA's first virtual event. We'll follow up with an email to ask for your comments, your suggestions for next time. So look for that email to come early next week. And we'd appreciate your help in making our next meetup even more relevant and stimulating. So thanks all, stay safe, and we'll see you in the great Indiana outdoors.